Vande Gujarat.
Hello, I welcome you all to another series of Linguaskill Reading Part 4. My name is Nisha Mehta and I'm the Functional English Trainer with Scope. So in past couple of sessions, we saw that there were a lot of tips, tricks, instructions and grammar topics that were shared with the candidates to help them ace the examination. In this series too, we are going to see what are some of the grammar topics that are going to help the candidates answer the questions correctly. But before we proceed for the topics, in the reading section, we are going to learn a little bit about what Linguaskill examination is. So let's see what a Linguaskill examination is, what it talks about, and how it helps the candidates know their proficiency in English language in all the 4 aspects. About Linguaskill. Linguaskill is a computer-based test that can be taken anywhere in the world by anyone. Now, the test takers or the candidate's proficiency in English language is tested in all the 4 aspects, which is reading, writing, listening, and speaking. The proficiency of the language is assessed on the CEFR scale. Just a little bit about what is CEFR scale. A CEFR scale gives the candidate a band score ranging from A1, which is a beginner level, to C2, which is a proficient user. Apart from that, the candidates are given the questions based on different difficulty levels. The difficulty level will range from simple to difficult. Linguaskill examination is available to the candidate in 2 options: Linguaskill Business and Linguaskill General. Linguaskill General, this exam tests the proficiency of language of the candidate used in real or routine life, where the questions asked in the Linguaskill General examination will be based on real or routine life, whereas the business exam tests the proficiency of language, of English as a language, in business or corporate setting. So the questions that will be asked in Linguaskill business exam to the candidate will be related to business, workplace, or their job profile. Linguaskill examination helps the employers know the efficiency and proficiency of the language among the candidates and recruit the best candidate for the organization or the company. Now let's move ahead and see what are some of the basic instructions and tips for the reading module. Now before I move to the reading module, general instructions and tips, I would just like to mention some of the points related to the format of the test. There are 5 questions that will be asked in the examination, in the reading test. Now, the first couple of questions will be the gap-filled questions. And the gap-filled questions, we have seen that what are some of the topics or how the candidate has to go about solving the gap-filled questions. Now, just a little bit about the format of the test. The format of the test says that there will be 5 questions that will be asked to the candidate. Now, these 5 questions are not timed as we have a timer in the speaking examination. We saw in the speaking series that the speaking part has a timer for 10 seconds, 20 seconds, and 1 minute for the candidate. However, it is not the same in the reading section. Now, Let's see how exactly is the format for the reading test that the candidate sees in the examination. The format says it has 5 questions. They are not timed. However, still the candidate needs to complete the test within the total time frame. There will not be special timer to complete the test, but there will be a total time that will be given to the candidate, and the candidate has to finish the reading test within the given time frame. Now, apart from that, the questions that will be asked will be the open gap-filled questions, in which the gaps will have choices for the candidates. Now, open questions as well as the questions which have gaps without the choices. The questions or the gaps that will be there in the questions, candidates will have to fill what they think is the best answer in the gaps. So the gaps at times will have choices and the gaps at times will not have choices. The next set of questions that will be asked in the reading series or reading exam is the small text and the extended text questions. The small text questions, as we know, in the previous series we have discussed the sample questions too for the small text. Now the small text questions will have a text from ranging from a letter, notice, or maybe a memo or an advertisement, in which the candidate will be given just a couple of lines, maybe say 4 to 5 lines, and those 4 to 5 lines have to be understood and interpreted. Now, when these lines are interpreted and understood by the candidate or the test takers, they go about choosing the right option from the multiple choice question that they receive. Now, since we have just 4 or 5 lines, 4 to 5 lines in the question, there's only 1 or 2 multiple choice questions that are asked to the candidate. Whereas in the extended questions, in the extended test questions, you will see that the candidate is asked or given multiple paragraphs on which they have multiple choice questions. So in the extended text questions, the candidate has to keep in mind that he or she is reading the text completely and answering the questions accordingly. Now, reading doesn't mean just going through it. Make sure reading means active reading. Active reading means that you are understanding and interpreting or understanding the viewpoints stated in the paragraphs. If you do not understand the paragraphs or the viewpoints stated in it, it is obvious that it's going to create a lot of problems when you are choosing the correct options from the multiple choice questions. So the extended choice questions have to be done very carefully after reading the text. So the basic, or we can say the most important tip in the entire reading section is that read the questions properly. Read even the gap-filled questions properly. Take your time, do not panic, stay calm and read the questions. Reading the questions, understanding the text and questions will help you give the right answers, whether it is a gap-filled question or an extended text questions. Because at the end of the examination, the aim of the test is only to know whether you can interpret the text or the reading part correctly. Now let's move ahead and see what are some of the basic instructions and tips right there on your screen. So the first question, as I said, the candidate will read the words around the gaps. Now, since I've already shared the format with you, I've already shared what is the format of the reading exam. This is the instruction and tips for the reading module. The first question says, the candidate will read the words given around the gaps. So whether you take it as an instruction or whether you take it as a tip, the candidate has to read the word, the entire sentence and the words next to or before the gaps, so that he gets an idea as to what do we have to fill in the gaps. Now, the gap-filled questions, when you have choices among the gap-filled questions, it becomes easier for you to just fill in one option. Choose the correct one and fill one of the options or one of the answers, best possible answers in it. However, when the gap-filled questions do not have choices, that is where the difficulty rises. Because you don't have any choice, and whatever you're going to fill, you have to see whether what part of speech is missing from there or what part can be added to frame the correct answer, or to frame the correct, or to make sure that the sentence looks absolutely correct. Now, let's see what is the next instruction or tip we have for the reading module. It says, to know what is missing in the gaps, the candidate must know the placement of different parts in the speech, in the sentence. Now, as I said, the gaps are not always predictable. When there are options given to the candidate, it is very easy to just pick up one option, strike the wrong ones, and fill in the correct option. However, when there are no options that are given to a candidate, it becomes all the more difficult to go ahead and fill in the right part. For that, it is very important for the candidate to know what part of speech is missing in the sentence, and just fill the basic thing in the sentence structure. The next instruction is the given options to fill the gaps are quite similar to each other. They are very similar words. You would not even, most of the times, the candidates can get confused. The candidates can get confused in the options given. They are so closely related. Almost all the options have similar meaning, or maybe the meanings are a little different from the other option. So what happens is, this creates a lot of confusion among the candidates. In order to solve the confusion, it is important that the candidates first figure out the part of speech and then fill in the correct answer. Now, first figure out what are the parts of speech already given in the question, in the sentence, and then figure out what is missing in the sentence. So whatever part of speech is missing in the sentence, you can, if there is a verb missing in the sentence requires a verb. So you can fill in the correct or absolutely correct verb right there in the gap. If you think there is a preposition missing, right? There's a preposition missing in the sentence. You can just think about all the prepositions that you might have studied and what is the correct preposition or conjunction that the sentence needs. And then just put it right there and fill the gap. Let's move ahead and see what is the next set of instructions we have on our screen. It says, the candidate must read the texts or extended texts carefully to understand the viewpoint stated. Now, in the entire reading series, in the entire module of the reading series, we have always stated that you're supposed to understand what is given in the text, what is given in the reading exam. You have to understand, no matter if the question is related to gap-filled questions or if the questions, it is related to the text, extended texts, you have to read the text very carefully and understand the viewpoint stated. Now, when you understand the viewpoint stated, what happens is, it's very obvious that once you've understood, you're going to pick up the right answer from the multiple choice questions. Now, even if you have multiple choices, you can just strike out the wrong options from the options given. If you have understood the text, you have interpreted the text correctly, but do not. This is just one thing to avoid. It's a general tip or an instruction that is given to you. Please avoid anything that you assume. Avoid everything that you're trying to assume, because assumptions do not work in the examination. Reading test is aiming at your understanding level. Reading test looks at the understanding of the candidate or the test takers. The aim is to assess the understanding of the test takers. So it is very important to understand the text and to interpret them correctly. If at all you find problems interpreting the text or understanding the text, or you can make notes in the form of bullet points. I'm sure you would not face any problems of such kind when it comes to, let's say, small texts, because the small text will have few lines or few sentences. Countably, just 4 to 5 sentences. However, the candidates will need to prepare the bullet points or notes only in the extended texts. And for the gap-filled questions, it is as simple as that. You should know what grammar topics to prepare. Now let's move ahead and see what is another set of instructions that we have on our screen. So the last set of instruction, or we can say that the candidate must prepare for some crucial grammar topics like prepositions, articles, auxiliaries, helping verbs, pronouns, adverbs, and conjunctions. And if required, if there is a need be, candidates can go ahead, make flashcards of the words so that they can remember them, they can study them anywhere they want. And flashcards can be made of the frequently used words in the exam. So if there are frequently used words there in the examination, while you're preparing for the examination, you see that there are a couple of words that are frequently used in the exam. Just make a flashcard out of it. Just keep a note. And flashcards should be made not only for the single words, you can also use collocations. Let me focus this topic for once more. Make sure that you study the collocations as much as possible, for one reason, that it is going to help you in your gap-filled questions. So the gap-filled questions can have collocations. Reading exam is all about reading about collocations, vocabulary. It is all about understanding the text, because the aim is to assess the candidate's ability to understand what is written or what he sees on the screen. So let's move ahead and see what are the grammar topics that we are covering for today in this series. We have the basic sentence structure first. Now, in the previous module, I had just mentioned what exactly is a sentence structure and how it is going to be useful for you to fill in the gaps or to attempt the gap-filled questions. Now, gap-filled questions, you can easily attempt it if you know the basic sentence structure. Now, in the earlier series or in the earlier modules, I have discussed the basic sentence structure and how you can categorize each word in the sentence. The sentence structure is completely formed of the parts of speech. We have 8 parts of speech in English language. Now, 8 parts of speech or parts come in an order in a sentence. हर सेंटेंस में जो 8 भाग हैं वो एक ऑर्डर में आते हैं. Now, अगर वो ऑर्डर में आ रहे हैं, if that comes in an order which is like the noun and pronoun in the beginning, and you have your helping verbs, and then you have your main verb, and then you have again a preposition or a conjunction and the next sentence. So if this is a basic sentence structure, this is going to help you fill the gaps quickly. But for that, the candidate needs to know what part needs to be fixed where. Now let's talk about the basic sentence structure first, and then we are going to see how that applies to the gap-filled questions. On your screen, we have basic sentence structure. It says noun, pronoun, which will come in the beginning of the sentence. Then you have auxiliary or helping verbs that will come next. And then you have the main verb. Now let's understand this basic sentence structure and how this is going to help you with the gap fill questions. Now, not only these things, the structure, the basic sentence structure will also help you with your speaking examinations. It is also going to help you to form the correct sentences for your speaking exams. We all know that there are different types of questions that are asked for the speaking examination. Now, the speaking examination has it wants the candidates to speak on the given topics for a certain time period. So, if you do not know how to use the sentence structures, the different sentence structures, it is very obvious that you're going to make mistakes while speaking. So the basic sentence structure that we are going to discuss under the reading section will not only help you ace the examination or will not only help you to complete the gap fill questions, it will also help you to form correct sentences in your speaking tests or the speaking exam. Now, what exactly is a basic sentence structure? In the beginning, your sentence will begin no matter what. The basic sentence structure will not change for you. It will remain the same whether you form complex sentences, whether you form simple sentences, or whether you form compound complex sentence. Now, if at all you're watching us for the first time, if you're listening to the reading series for the first time, I would appreciate if you go back and listen to all the speaking series or the speaking modules, because we've discussed the different kinds of sentences and the sentence patterns which will be helpful in your speaking and in your reading. So all the sentences that you form in English language, they are formed with this basic sentence structure, which is noun, pronoun in the beginning. The sentence can either start with a noun or it can start with a pronoun. That is a must. Then the sentence later on will have auxiliaries or helping verbs. Then it is going to have a main verb. Let's just take an example, if we can, to help you understand how this structure works. Now, most of the times we have you seen in mathematics we have a formula. मैथ्स में हमें एक फॉर्मूला दिया जाता है हर किस्म के सम को सॉल्व करने का. हर तरीके के सम को हम सॉल्व कर सकते हैं. किस चीज़ से? एक फॉर्मूला की हेल्प से. साइंस में भी अगर आपने नोटिस किया होगा तो एक फॉर्मूला दिया जाता है, उस फॉर्मूला की मदद से हम उस सम को सॉल्व कर देते हैं. Similarly, this basic sentence structure is the formula of forming the sentences or to know how a sentence is formed. तो अगर हमारा फॉर्मूला हमने दिया है कि noun pronoun starting या beginning में आता है, then you have the helping verbs and then you have the main verb. If at all you find any problem forming the sentences in your speaking skills, or maybe you don't know what exactly should be filled in the gap fill questions, you're going to just sit back, relax and think about this formula. Because all the sentences in the world, around the world in English language, is based on this. Do you want to know how? Let's take any example. You will see the basic structure, the initial structure, till where we have the verb remains the same. And later on, whatever we want to add in the sentence, we can add according to our needs. So let's take an example in this. If I say, I am going to the office for a meeting. I am going to the office for a meeting. Now, what do you think? I have this sentence structure. Did you notice something? Did you actually notice that I have formed the sentence keeping in mind the basic formula? What is the basic formula? पहले क्या आता है? Noun या pronoun? क्या मेरे sentence में पहले noun pronoun आ रहा है? Just think about it. I am going to the office. What is I? I is actually a pronoun. A noun or a pronoun, you can say. Now, what is the next thing? Let's talk about I am. What is am? Am is an auxiliary verb, or you can say it is a helping verb. Now, let's talk about what is going. Going. So, what is going? Going says that it is a verb. It's an action. You're doing something, so it's an action. Now, when we talk about the basic sentence structure, आपने सबने नोटिस किया होगा कि वो basic sentence structure एक sentence में आ गया. Now, इसके आगे का जो structure होता है, वो हमारी ज़रूरत पर depend करता है. It depends whether we need that part or we don't need that part. See, if I say I'm going is a complete sentence. ये एक पूरा sentence है. क्या आपको लगता है ये आधा sentence है? No. I am going. मैं जा रही हूँ. Now, कहाँ जा रही हूँ? It is a requirement. If you say, I'm going to Ahmedabad, I'm going to Baroda, I'm going to London, I'm going to UK, वो एक preference है. I'm going तक sentence complete है. It is a complete sentence. You don't have to think about whether you have to add something to it. No, you don't have to add something to it. It's a complete sentence. Now, it is out of preference. Preference ये ज़रूरत है मेरी कि मुझे आगे place लगानी है या नहीं लगानी. So when I say I am going for a meeting or I am going to Ahmedabad, it says Ahmedabad is a place. Now, the basic sentence structure remains the same. हमने कुछ भी changes नहीं किए हैं basic sentence structure में. Noun pronoun से शुरुआत हुई, helping verb and then main verb. वो वैसे का वैसे ही रहेगा. It is going to remain the same. However, when we actually move on to the next preference, like, we want to go to Goa for a meeting, for a presentation, whatever we want to add, will be added later on in the sentence. तब तक आपका sentence structure बिल्कुल same रहेगा. Now, let's look at what are some of the things that we need to follow when we are talking in terms of sentence structure. Okay, so the first rule of the basic sentence structure. Now, make sure that you listen to these things or rules very carefully. It says, prepositions are always placed after the main verb without changing the basic structure of the sentence. Prepositions are always placed after the main verb without changing the basic structure. जैसे कि मैंने आपसे कभी sentence discuss किया that I am going and then there is a to. I am going to Ahmedabad, I am going to London, I am going for a meeting, right? What is this to and for? To and for, they both are prepositions. And prepositions are always placed after the main verb without changing the basic structure of the sentence. Okay? So now you know that if at all there is a preposition missing in the sentence, or if there is a gap which is there in the sentence and it requires a preposition, think about all the possible prepositions that you can put in the gap or you can place in the gap. Okay? Let's move ahead and see what is the next instruction for the basic sentence structure. It says adverbs are placed usually towards the end or right in the beginning, much before the noun or the pronoun. Now let me give you an example of how the adverbs are placed. Adverbs are placed at the end. Usually the placement of the adverbs are towards the end. Now, when you talk about adverbs and when you talk about a sentence, let's, for example, take a sentence of an adverb. Let's take an example which says, I am working continuously in my office. Or I have been working continuously for 2 hours or since 2 hours. Did you see that continuously has been used at the end of the sentence? I've been working constantly. I have been working constantly. So constantly being an adverb is used towards the end. Now, if you talk about the adverb used towards the end, these adverbs can be placed right in the beginning of the sentence too. How do we use it? Constantly, and then there's a comma, constantly, I have been working. Constantly, I have been working. So the placement of the adverbs can be towards the end. It can also be towards the beginning of the sentence. However, it's not necessary that the adverbs are used right at the end or in the beginning of the sentence, much before the noun or the pronoun. There are a couple of adverbs or adverbs which are used in the middle of the sentences. Like, for example, I never used a pen in the examination. I never used a pen in the examination. Now, what is never? I never used. Never is actually, it is an adverb. So never is not used in the beginning of the sentence. We saw that it is not used at the end of the sentence. We saw that it is used in the middle or in the center of the sentence. However, it is used right before the verb. I never used a pen. Right? So this is how you make sure that the adverbs that you use in the sentence, they are right in the beginning or at the end or somewhere before the verb in the sentence. Whereas prepositions should always be after the verbs. I'm going to London. To is what? It's a preposition. Let's move ahead and see what do we have next on our screen. It says conjunctions connect the sentences and hence come in the middle of the sentence, but both the sentences stand independently. As I said, the conjunctions connect the sentences. In the earlier series, we saw that the conjunctions used in the sentences are to connect the sentences. Now, if you're connecting the sentences, it is very important to make sure that the sentence stands independently. So when the sentence is standing independently, you just have to put a subordinating or a coordinating conjunction, choose the right one and put it in the gap. So conjunctions actually come when there is one independent sentence and there's another independent sentence joined together. Even if there is a dependent sentence, you can change the conjunctions to subordinating conjunctions. For example, you can use because, that's a subordinating conjunction. You can use since, for, as a subordinating conjunction where the later part of the sentence or maybe the former part of the sentence is dependent on the other sentence. So conjunctions, they come right at the center of one sentence joined with the other sentence. Conjunctions, most of the times, conjunctions and prepositions also help to begin the sentence. Most of the times we say that my birthday, let's just take a simple example to help you understand the usage of prepositions in the middle and in the beginning. So if I say my birthday is in August, where I said in is used in the middle. Now the same in can be used in the beginning too. In August, I celebrate my birthday. So it's not necessary that the sentence is beginning with noun or pronoun. Because if you change the sentence pattern changes and the words are also shifted in the sentence. However, you should know where to shift, what place to shift, what word is something that you should know. And only an expert user or a proficient user in the language can understand what and where to shift the words. Otherwise, it is also recommended that you stick to the basic sentence structure. Just stick to the basic sentence structure so that you know what is missing, where it is missing. Now let's look at the next point on the screen. It says, interjections are the words that are used to convey strong emotions or feelings. Hence, they come in the beginning of the sentence. Now, it says, interjections are the words that are used to convey strong emotions. Have you seen a lot of words like ouch, ah, or what a beauty, where you express strong emotions or strong feelings? When you fall down, or when somebody does something wrong or shocking, what is that one word that comes out of your mouth in terms of when you're completely shocked or surprised? Right? When you're shocked, you say, oh my God. You say, oh. But when you're surprised or you like something, when you look at something beautiful, you like something, you just say, wow. What are these words? These words are basically interjections. However, these things can be useful in speaking. There is no possibility, or maybe very less possibility, where you have questions, where there are gap fills related to the interjections. Because interjections are basically the strong feelings that you just express while speaking. It's not something that you write. It is possible that you may get to see these feelings, you may get to see interjections when you see the extended text or you see the small text questions. Otherwise, there is very less possibility or no possibility of an interjection being asked as a question. Let's look at what do we have next on our screen. Preparing for prepositions. It says, now what are prepositions? It says prepositions basically are the things that describes the relationship of two nouns or pronouns. Now we all know the usage of preposition. We know that prepositions are always used or placed right after the verbs, the main verbs. क्रिया के बाद prepositions लगाए जाते हैं. Now when you talk about prepositions, how to go about preparing for prepositions? So some of the commonly used prepositions of time are on, at and in. Now when you talk about the prepositions usage, I've already shared where they are placed. So you know in the gap-filled questions there is a higher possibility of being asked about filling in the gaps with prepositions. ऐसा एक बहुत ही higher possibility है that your questions, your gap-fill questions can ask you to fill prepositions. Now prepositions can be prepositions of time, prepositions of place, extended timing, or maybe something related to the position or direction. Now, these prepositions like in, on and at, they come under the timings as well as they show you the place too. So when you prepare for prepositions, always make sure to prepare these three prepositions, which is in, on and at. These three prepositions should be prepared in terms of place and in terms of timings. Now let's just see the prepositions that you have on your screen is a preposition of time. So when we talk about time, on is used where you have days of week or you have date mentioned. Now what are days of week? Where do we use on as a days of week? You have a sample or you have an example right there at the bottom of the table. It says the meeting will be held on Monday. Do you see that there is a day of week as Monday? Now Monday is a day of week, and right before that you have a word which is a preposition and it says on. Now, as I said in the earlier modules that you will have, whenever you place the preposition, the right preposition needs to be placed. Why? Because one small little word can change the meaning of the sentence. It can also make your sentence seem incorrect. Now, instead of, if I say, I have to go for a meeting on Monday, or I will go for a meeting on Monday. Now, since there is a day of week, that is the reason we have put on there. We have put on before the day of week. Now, for example, if I try to change that on with in, do you think that the sentence will be correct? The meeting will be held in Monday. Do you think it is the right usage? Do you think at will be the right usage? The meeting will be held at Monday. No. So where do we use on? We only use on when there is a date given. We only use on when there is a day of week given. For example, if there is a date, let's say I say the meeting will be held on. The meeting will be held on 2nd October. 2nd is a date. So when there is a date, there will be on. Now, let's see what we have for at. What is the rule that we use for at? When we say at is used when you use words like noon, night, midnight, and the exact time. If you're telling someone, let's take a break at 4. So when you tell someone that let's take a break at 4, you are mentioning the exact time. You're giving out the exact time. So in short, when you mention, the candidates mention the exact time, or when you have blanks, like for example, you get a gap-filled question where you have to fill at, and right after the gap, you have the exact timing mentioned. Always fill the gap with at. Or even if there is a word like night, I'll see you, then there is a gap, and night. I'll see you at night. Or the meeting will be held at night. On is used for days of week and date. At is used for timings, exact timings, noon, night, and midnight. Let's see what in is used for. In is used for evening, morning, afternoon, months, years, and seasons. Now, just to let you know that evening, when I say that the presentation, we'll have the presentation in the evening. Can we actually say that let's have the presentation at evening? No. Can we say we'll have the presentation on evening? No. We cannot use the other prepositions at and on because that may seem incorrect as per the sentence. So wherever you use the word evening, morning, afternoon, months, even if you're using months and years and you're talking about seasons, you will always use in. Now that is one of the reasons when we give the instructions and tips, we always tell the candidates to make sure, it's always recommended to read the gap-filled questions, to read the words around the gaps. Don't just keep sitting and thinking about the words to be filled in the gaps. Don't just sit there and think about the words. Always make sure that you are thinking. You're thinking what? You're thinking or you're looking at the words around the gaps. Because the words around the gaps can help you pick the right word. You know what the word is. You know what is missing. You know the basic sentence structure. And then you know the right word. That's how you fill in the gaps. That's how you ace the examination. You ace this task. But again, the pro tip is that you have to make sure that you read the questions properly. Because without reading, you won't understand what exactly is missing. Without reading, you won't be able to do the extended text question or the multiple choice questions. And the aim of the examination definitely is to assess your ability in understanding the text. not just reading the text. And once you understand the text appropriately, correctly, or entirely, you will see that your multiple choice questions that you mark or the choices that you pick up, they are the absolutely right choices. Now let's move ahead and see what do we have next for the prepositions. Now, extended timing prepositions. For the extended timings, you see there are prepositions like since, for, by, from, until, during, within. Now, the examination, Linguaskill examination, will not give the candidates the easiest way out. It will not help or give the candidates the easiest of the prepositions to be filled in the exam or in the sentences. So the gaps will have a lot of difficult prepositions to be filled. And what can they be? They can be since, for, by, from, until, during, within. Now, on your screen, you see that I have mentioned few sentences. And where do we use these? In the sentences, we have already used the prepositions. We have already used the prepositions that we have mentioned. And you will see where exactly these prepositions are used in the sentences. Let's say, for example, the first sentence says, I am going to London for 3 weeks, right? I'm going to London for 3 weeks. Now, if I say I'm going to London for 3 weeks, it says for. For is what? There are two prepositions here. One is to and another one is for. Now, why did we use to? Because it is showing a place, London. Why did we use for? Why did we not use by, from, until? We used for because it is mentioned that the person who is going to London will spend at least 3 weeks, maximum 3 weeks there. And then he's going to come back. Right? I'll spend 3 weeks and then I'm going to come back. That's it. Not more than that. So similarly, you're going to see that the other preposition, it says the team members were using mobile phones during the meeting, which means during is used throughout. अगर आप कोई भी सेंटेंस ऐसा देखते हैं कि जहाँ पर आप throughout कोई काम कर रहे हैं, that is where you use during as a preposition. It says the project should be finished within a year. Within का मतलब होता है कि उस समय तक या उस समय से पहले, उस समय के अंदर हम उस प्रोजेक्ट को ख़त्म कर लेंगे. We'll finish the project within that given time frame or within that mentioned time. The next is, it says the laptops are too expensive until now. Up to or before that time, it was expensive. They were expensive. Next, couple of uses for by. It says, what are some of the different uses for by? My office is by the church. By is a preposition and there are various uses to it. I would really suggest to all the candidates to go through these sessions carefully and make sure that you know where to use each preposition. Now, by is one of the most important prepositions that you have to or you may need to fill in your examination. Hence, we have given all the usages of by. It says the house was destroyed by fire, which is by the means. Again, it says, I will take the papers from the company by tomorrow, which means sometime before that timing, the person will take the papers. The next example says the area of the shop is 10 by 15 meters. So by is also used to specify certain dimensions. Specify the place nearby or close by. Something which is a means of. That is where by is used. So I'm sure by now all the reading sections would very much give you an idea of how the reading test or tasks have to be solved. In the reading series, Linguaskill reading series, we dealt with various topics, we dealt with the test format and helped the candidates go through the examination structure and the sample questions. We also made sure that all the grammar topics should be covered under these series that is going to help the candidates ace the examination or fill the right choices in the reading exam. This was it from my end in the reading series. Thank you.